Howdy ho ho, my good humans. How the hell are you doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I am Brandon Sylvia. Thank you all for stopping by, for tuning in today to talk about everything that I have finished, every game I finished in the last 3 months or so. It's been about 3 months since I have sat down to make one of these, like what I'm playing, I've done the PS5 pickup videos. I've done the Spider-Man ranking where, I talked about Spider-Man 2 a bit. So for those games, when talking about Spider-Man 2 and when talking about some of the other games I've talked about in recent videos for the PS5 pickups, I'll breeze through those a little bit quicker. But I just want to kind of go into a little bit more detail on some of these titles, talk about some specific things that I liked, that I didn't like from the games I have been playing and finished in the last 3 months. And I haven't played through and finished a ton of games in the last 3 months. I think there are like 8 or so here that we're going to go through and talk about. So it's not like a huge list to go over. So hopefully I'm going to try to make sure that this video is like not over an hour long. I know those videos haven't traditionally performed too well on the channel. So we'll try to shorten this up a bit, keep it around 30 minutes or so. That seems to be a good range that those of you out there like and will click on, and seems to be doing better for the algorithm. So I'll feed the algorithm gods. But I do really like going into more detail, so I got to figure out a right format for that at some point. But let's go ahead and kick it off with Spider-Man 2. Obviously the big game, the biggest game of the last few months for sure. And yeah, I played through it, finished it. I have finished the majority of the like story-based side missions, and I loved it. I totally loved the game. The old saying, you only get one chance to make a first impression. This game, the first impression this game leaves you with is astounding. It is one of the most memorable moments from any video game this year, if not the most memorable moment from any video game this year. Something I just did recently while playing the game was I adjusted the swinging assist. I turned it down to like 3, and that makes the movement around the city feel so different. It feels much more akin to Spider-Man 2, a much more like physics-based swinging system, and it's just cool to have that kind of nostalgic feel whenever I'm thinking about that PlayStation 2 Spider-Man game, and now this one I can kind of make it control similarly with the swinging, with a little bit more of the modernization, a little bit more of the intuitive design, just with how quickly Spider-Man will start running across the buildings and then zipping straight into the swing suit. And once you've fully upgraded that, you're gliding across this world like Superman. It is really crazy. And these things are, pretty much, I've talked about all of this in that ranking video, but it just in case anyone didn't watch that and wants to kind of get up to speed with my thoughts, I'll lay out some of that stuff here. I can't just assume everybody watches every piece of my content, but I also don't want to be too redundant. So yeah, web swinging is obviously still an absolute treat in Spider-Man 2, 2023 Spider-Man 2. I think that visually, obviously the world looks amazing, and the cinematics look amazing, and the scope and the scale of some of these moments, like I talked about with that holy shit moment at the beginning in that first boss encounter. Most of you probably already know who it is and you've seen it in videos and stuff, but I still I know this is one of the most anticipated games of the year. I don't want to spoil stuff. I'll maybe do a section at the back end of this video or of this discussion, and I'll have it in the timestamps, because I do want to talk about a couple of spoilery things, and I'll talk more about that opening moment in that section as well. But back to the visuals, I think character models they're not weak. Like I said, in cinematics, the characters look amazing. But in the just kind of in-game interaction, I think the character models are very weak. And the kind of like non-main characters that you'll interact with throughout this game, it's at times a bit jarring. You know what I mean? Especially coming off of something like Ragnarok or coming off of something like Forbidden West. And it's a huge step back from those games, but world building and like specific spectacle moments, I would take this over probably any PlayStation first party title at this point. And I mean, you even see like some of the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, like the immediate world swapping, that kind of portal technology where you could instantly swap into a new world. They pull off a couple little tricks in Spider-Man 2 that you'll definitely see that Ratchet and Clank technology in this game. So that's definitely really cool from a technical perspective. I never ran into any like frame rate dropping or anything like that at all. So it is a technical powerhouse. However, I ran into more bugs in this game than I have in any PlayStation first party game in a long time. This, I wouldn't say it's busted or just, it's definitely not unplayable or anything silly like that. It's a fantastic game from start to finish, but I ran into a few bugs where it definitely hurt the experience a little bit, because it's just those minor nitpicks that continually add up and become more annoying as they pile on. Once again, I talked about this in that ranking video, so I'm going to try to not be too redundant here, but I had one where I was stuck in a vent. I had one where my character was like glowing. I had one at the like very end of the game where I had to press L1 and X or L1 and square, whatever the button combination was, and I was pressing it. I just literally couldn't and had to restart the checkpoint. So yeah, it's not like the most technically polished Sony first party game I've ever played in my life. However, the gameplay, I will say, might be my favorite Sony first party game that I've ever played in my life, right up there with Ghost of Tsushima. This thing, I mean, the moment to moment gameplay and the game feel with this is so damn good. And having the new web lines, which allow you to, you know, kind of walk above the enemies and take them out one by one, and then you're cloaking as Miles, and it just, the stealth feels so good and so rewarding. And then as well, having, you know, Miles and Peter, who both have different powers, and you can upgrade their skills appropriately and however you would like to individually. So it's not, you have a skill tree where they're combined and you can upgrade both of their skills in one, but you also have separate skill trees where you can only upgrade Miles and you can only upgrade Peter. And so you kind of can go in and tinker a bit and mess around with one character and rely a little bit more on the other character, but have a more experimental character that you just want to test things out, test different play styles out with. And I like the variety on offer there. I also love popping up at a crime scene, and I'm, you know, going into battle, and then I look over and Miles is already at the crime scene. So it makes this world feel so alive, and it makes these characters feel like they're actually doing something when you're not controlling them. And that was like one of the coolest holy shit little moments in this game that really stuck out to me. And then, you know, going up to him after and doing the little, oh, you're Spider-Man, I'm Spider, like the whole meme thing. It's a really charming little touch. And it's sick that, you know, staying in that vein with the customization, you have all of your suits laid out here that you can go and buy and all that, but you can also like customize the color scheme for the suits. And I love changing up colors, changing up, you know, the clothing colors and the clothing patterns for my characters in video games. It's like one of my favorite little customization options. So that really just struck a chord with me. I was really pleased to see that option in Spider-Man 2. Just swinging around in a goofy ass yellow suit. It shit made me so happy. And like I said, I enjoy having both Peter and Miles in the game and swapping between them, and having one character that you rely a little bit more on, and then the other character that you're kind of playing around with a bit more and doing some more experimental stuff with their skill trees. However, narratively, I think that was a big problem for Insomniac. They try to flesh out Miles's story a lot more with the side content, but I felt like other than some big-ish moments later on, I don't feel like Miles' story really felt as important as Peter's story. And like that's fine, you know. Let's actually go ahead and begin the spoilers, because it's impossible for me to continue talking about this without spoiling it. So spoiler walls begin here. Go ahead and, you know, jump to the next thing in the timestamps if you don't want to be spoiled. So the reason I say that's okay and understandable is because at the end of the game, there's a pretty clear passing of the torch where Peter pretty much gives the Spider-Man mantle to Miles. And so we're led to believe that Spider-Man 3 will probably be starring Miles. So in that sense, I can understand why so much emphasis was put on Peter's story and the culmination and the passing of the torch and kind of fleshing all of those in-between moments out before we got to the finale, where it's kind of wrote in stone that this is... I'm sure Peter will still play a huge influence moving forward, but I think it's pretty much wrote in stone that the next game will primarily be a Miles story for, the next big Spider-Man 3 title. But I think for me, one of the reasons it was kind of a bummer that I was playing as Peter more than Miles is because, like I said, I like the stealth so much, and I like cloaking and jumping up to my damn web line as soon as I get spotted and running away a little bit, scurrying away, trying to hide in a corner, and then hitting back up to my web line and taking the enemies out, perching, taking the enemies out one by one. And when you're playing as Peter, you can still have a successful stealth run, but you don't have that cloaking ability, and that's such a huge factor. So maybe it is just a little bit more of a me thing, wanting to use Miles more than Peter. And I'm actually really excited to continue forward for Spider-Man 3 and I'm assuming play exclusively as Miles, at least for probably a large part of the game. Then Peter will get suckered back in and have to save Miles, or there'll be something where you need both Spider-Men. Like, I'm sure that'll play out. But yeah, I understand why Miles was a little bit underutilized. But a big positive in this story for me is the pacing. The pacing in this game is mwah, chef's kiss, so strong. And I really love how a lot of the in-between moments they give you something to do in gameplay. So it's things that you would usually just cut to a cutscene and you're sitting there watching it take place, but you're always thinking in the back of your mind, like, damn, it would be cool if I was riding the bike to the school with Harry. It would be cool if I was breaking into the school with Harry and shooting the basketball in the gym, and like all these things you can do in this game. And sure, is the basketball shooting little game, is that pretty simplistic? Absolutely it is. But it's still so cool that it makes you, or it allows you to engage with it, and it doesn't feel like tedium kind of busy work. It's things that you actually would like to do, running away from the janitors you're breaking into the school, and then going to Coney Island and riding the different rides and playing the different games, the different kind of carnival games that are all set up. And there's like a lot of damn games that are set up for you to engage with in that moment. And I did go back to Coney Island, and I was really bummed out by this, that you couldn't continue playing the games after that mission. I think it's only set up for that one mission in specific, and that was a little bit of a bummer. But I just think those little details in the story really matter. Or like how you'll be doing a mission and you'll hear Miles or Peter, they'll get like a call when they're trying to go in a mission stealthily, and they'll get a call, and they'll be like whispering when they get the call, and then if they get spotted, you'll hear their voice fluctuate, and you kind of you hear the panic through the call, and they're running away or like engaging in combat, and you can hear that in the way that they're speaking to the person on the other end. It's really wild. Those little attention to detail things very much make this just that much more engaging. It just adds that extra little bit of pop, that little bit of pizzazz that you, those little things that you'll just kind of take with you once you finish playing the game. And I could go on and on. Obviously, the combat's incredible, and the more you play it, the more fun it gets with the different abilities and, shooting out the gadget that brings all the enemies close together, and then doing the jump up and slam down that power fucking, you have Miles jump up in the air, and that big circle appears, and he slams down with this power punch that's like breaking the damn ground, and all the enemies are pulled in because you use that gadget at the right time. And just the simplicity of going up underneath an enemy's legs, and that baseball slide, the feel of that carried over from Spider-Man 1 that was built there, and it's still building off the blocks that were built with that Arkham foundation. But golly, it feels so damn good to play in the new. I think these are new abilities where you can grab enemies and swing them left to right with L2 and R2. And then like pick them up in the air and slam them back down when you press L2 and R2 at the same time. And then getting, the symbiote suit and having that more brute force gameplay where you're just slugging. You're just slugging motherfuckers, and you press in L3 and R3 at the same time, and you just turn in like this crazed mode where nothing's bothering you. You're knocking out people with 1-2 shots. And I will say a big surprise to me, the second I had to play as Mary Jane in this game, I was like, no, we're going to go through this boring ass stealth section again. Absolutely not. Mary Jane's a badass in this game. She has like this little stun taser gun thing. I don't know what the hell it is, but she has this little stun weapon that she uses. You go up behind someone, press square, immediately take them out with one hit. And then later in the game, she incorporates Spider-Man's like web technology into her gun, and she's blasting at enemies, sticking them to cars and shit as you're going through in a stealthy manner. So once again, I really enjoy stealth, so I was actually always looking forward to those missions, which was a huge surprise to me because that shit sucked in the first game. It was so tedious and boring. I will say, MJ might be in the wrong profession. She seems more equipped to take out enemies in a quicker fashion than even Spider-Man, so she might want to, think about picking up a damn mask and a cape and getting out there and then stopping some crime. But by the end of the game, she starts up her own little podcast. She's out here. She's cooking up some content. Me and Mary Jane are competing for clicks right now. But staying with Mary Jane, the dumbest section of this game, the dumbest parts of this game in general, and this is something that I find constantly regarding the symbiote suit, regarding just how moody and the tonal disconnect that I have in these moments where, oh my god. So, and I understand why they have to do it this way. It's like baked into the lore, but it's like, can we just deviate a little bit from this? There's a moment where, and there's a whole bunch of spoilers we got to kind of navigate through to get there, but Harry Osborn ends up becoming Venom in this game, and as he's overtaken by that Venom fucking rage or what, I'm not a comic book guy, whatever the hell's going on that makes the intoxication from the symbiotic powers or whatever he's granted that fucks with his brain. That's probably a horrible breakdown. Like I said, I'm not a comic book lore guy. I'm just trying to kind of give you my thoughts from what I remember in the game. But in this moment, he goes and he kind of infects Mary Jane with this symbiotic power, and she becomes a, symbiotic Venom-like creature. And her and Peter are in this battle. She's fighting Spider-Man in this battle, and there's a quote that literally made me laugh out loud in what is supposed to be a very sincere moment. Like I literally laughed out loud, which is a rare thing to do while playing a video game. They're bickering back and forth as they're fighting, and Mary Jane is kind of being a bit disparaging, and then as she's overtaken by this symbiotic power, and she says something about Peter's job and is being dismissive in that regard. And Peter says, I do have a job. And he says it with the most sincere tone. And I just lost it, man. To think of in the middle of this battle where you're possibly going to injure or incapacitate the love of your life. For you to say, I do have a job, is a hilarious statement in the middle of such an important fight. Oh man, that shit was good. That really got me. That whole scene really got me. I found that to be so funny. And just like moments where Peter is confused about why people are behaving the way they're behaving, even though he was behaving the same way as he was intoxicated with this symbiotic power. And it's like, why are you unaware of the way that Harry is acting when you were acting the exact same way? Maybe he doesn't really know exactly how he was acting because he was so overtaken with this intoxication from the symbiotic powers. I don't know. There were a few things within that left me a bit disconnected and scratching my head kind of, but that's those are those stories usually. You know what I mean? And boy, I'm rambling on like a motherfucker. Let me quickly wrap this up. The big thing I want to talk about, and the big moment that really left me underwhelmed with the story, was when you get to play as Venom. And I know people out there are like, what? You know, that's the thing you were most looking forward to if that was a possibility. It's cool that it's available, but it's like, what, a 15, 20-minute mission, totally linear. You're not allowed to move throughout the city as Venom. And I know that they're talking about maybe doing a spin-off game as Venom. Absolutely do that, because that 15, 20-minute section is cool. I would just like to see that shit expanded. You know, when you're looking at Ultimate Spider-Man and what they did with Venom, like, this isn't even close. This is not even close. The spectacle of it in that moment and how they scripted it cinematically and how that merged with the gameplay as you're taking on the guards in the Oscorp building and then breaking out of that building. It's cool how it takes place and landing on the helicopter. Cool moments, no doubt about it. But it was just really short. It was short and sweet. I'll give it that. It was short and sweet. I was just underwhelmed. I wanted to play as Venom for like 2 hours and then maybe have the option to like have a side mode where, you know, after you finish the game, a new game plus where you can just play as Venom exclusively if you would like to, with his own skill tree and shit. And that is expecting too much. I'll give them that based off of what else they had in the game. For sure, that's expecting too much, but I'm totally down for a Venom, you know, kind of Miles Morales, that scale of game. 5-hour story, but a free open world to explore. Sign me up. But at the end of the day, the story is great. The stuff that they did with Kraven is really intelligent, you know, regarding his illness and him wanting his one last final hunt to be a significant hunt and one that is gonna, you know, put him down and then kill him off. And then the stuff with Martin Lee where Miles is having to overcome a lot of hurdles based off of, you know, his dad being killed at the hands of Martin Lee, his dad being killed because of Martin Lee. And then them coming together, working together to find, you know, like a solution for the entire Venom arc. Also, incredible side missions with Yuri and the Flame. I really recommend doing all of those missions where it's like this cultist story, and Yuri and Spider-Man have this kind of back and forth dynamic going on where she's killed somebody and then Spider-Man's not totally forgiving of her, and then it culminates in a big battle, and then you lead to the final mission where you work together again and she ends up saving Spider-Man, and then in that moment a really cool little detail is revealed, which does kind of lead me to believe that maybe we do see a Venom spin-off title. Well, I guess I should say you find this, like, you know, symbiote sample vial thing, and you are taking out the main enemy of the cult, and in like the last moment he says something to the effect of, when the Crimson flee, no, that's Starfield, Crimson something or another, when we take over, we'll bring like destruction and carnage. And then the vial, the stuff inside of the vial is like melding the red and black colors, and it's like obviously a tease that Carnage is going to pop up in the next game. The Mysterio sections are fantastic as well, with the Mysterio and Miles story, and then the boss battle that takes place there is great. The culmination moment is fantastic, where it's revealed that Mysterio has been held captive, and this is all being done against his will with the little Mysterio haunted houses, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. Overall, man, I would say this is definitely a must-play title. Despite, you know, having some issues with the story, despite having some issues, you know, with bugs, I would probably give this like a solid, if I was to score it, I'd probably probably put it around like a 9.2, 9.3-ish in that range. Very, very high up there. And obviously scores are totally arbitrary and useless in the modern age, but I think it's kind of fun to put a stamp on how you feel about something in the moment. These things obviously change with time, and who knows where I'll land on it in a couple years if I ever think about what I would score it again. But yeah, for the time being, I'll say 9.2, 9.3, somewhere in that range for Spider-Man 2. But yeah, Spider-Man 2's, really the big dog over the last 3 months that I really wanted to talk about. We'll rapid fire through these next few titles real quick. First up, we have El Paso Elsewhere. This is like a cool-ass independent Max Payne style title, and it is just dripping with atmosphere, dripping with a unique new kind of retro feel that we don't see often incorporated into modern games. Like, we've seen so many of the SNES and the NES and we've seen that era emulated so much and replicated so much with modern releases, and that's kind of looked at as like the new age retro nostalgic titles that we get regularly. El Paso Elsewhere is my retro. That's my nostalgia. That's that PS2 era nostalgia. And you're jumping out the way with the bullet time slow-mo, taking out enemies. And the music is so fucking great. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the lead designer, it might just be a one-man team on this game. Okay, no, it's not just a one-man team. It's an independent developer still, but it's not just a one-man team. But if I'm not mistaken, all of the music was created by, or a good majority of the rap in the game was created by one of the lead developers, and it's so good. The music is so good. I would buy a damn vinyl of this day one. This is so good. The music is this very like nihilistic, just punchy ass soundtrack that fuses so great with what you're doing in the gameplay, and it's all tied into the game. So like the lyrics are directly reflecting the levels that you're going through and the story beats that you're coming up against. It is good, man. It is really, really good. The entire game is really, I shouldn't say the entire game is really good. My entire thoughts on the game are, it's up there for me. This is like a solid 7.8 to 8 out of 10 range. I really enjoyed this title. The only knock I would have against it, and it is a pretty big knock, is that this is probably about 8 hours long, and by about hour 5 I was pretty much ready to wrap it up. So it overstays its welcome a bit, because I think the narrative that they have is so strong, and getting to the finale, it seems a bit more drawn out, and you're just kind of going through somewhat repetitive level after somewhat repetitive level. The level design is usually pretty good, and it's fun to engage with, and it's fun to do the slow-mo shooting and jumping over a damn table and jumping through glass and dual pistol, taking out a few enemies at a time, lining up the headshots, having your stake, and driving that bitch through a vampire's heart. And it's a very simple, very easy game. This feels like a game that was made for people who want to play something when they get off work. They want to chill. They want to have a throwback, nice experience. All the, the textureless kind of PS1 era faces, where it's not like this well animated showpiece display for you visually from the cinematic perspective or anything like that. But the writing is just so fucking fantastic, with great humor, this great poetic sort of verbiage that is constantly used throughout the game, and that like I said, that dark humor, that nihilistic sort of feel that you have similar to Max Payne, with the inner monologues and the somewhat self-deprecating humor at times, just honestly self-hatred, if we're being totally transparent. But yeah, a good-ass, dope-ass vampire story with some fun old-school Max Payne gameplay. It's strong. Maybe overstays its welcome a bit. I would still give this somewhere in the fairly high 7s, I would say. I also finally played through damn Bioshock 2. That one has been sitting on my backlog for quite some time, and yeah, this is a great experience to jump into, and I was thinking about jumping straight into Bioshock Infinite after how much I enjoyed 2. I feel like I enjoyed 2 more than 1 for some reason. Maybe, just playing as the Big Daddy, and then later on in the game, I'm upgrading my drill to the max, and I'm deflecting oncoming, projectiles back at the enemies, and stuff like that was really fun, and obviously wasn't available in the first game in that exact capacity. I never really thought the first game or this one was like the strongest first person shooter. I don't think the first person shooting is all that great, so I really do try to stick to kind of the melee approach, and then just using the abilities on top of that, like spawning my damn tornadoes. I got my tornadoes going out and attacking people, launching them up in the air, and then I come through with my drill just driving that shit through their skull, having my damn telekinetic ability, and grabbing a fuel tank and just launching it at some unsuspecting enemies off in the distance. It's very, very satisfying. I mean, the world building in these games are obviously second to none, and that remains true from Bioshock 1 into Bioshock 2. It's a beautiful, beautiful game. That opening section of this game is just so hard-hitting and impactful and memorable, and narratively it's incredible. You all know that it's incredible narratively. It's maybe not as strong as Bioshock 1. I don't think that holy shit moment, that oh my god, I can't believe that you just flipped the entire way that I play video games on its head, and it's making me rethink everything about this interactive experience that I've just had for the last 8 hours, and I'm almost being guided against my will in some regard. Like, those moments are it's hard to replicate that, so I understand why it doesn't have that same impact narratively into that it did in 1, but the stuff regarding Eleanor and how they build up to that by the finale of Bioshock 2, and how your decisions in the game have an impact on the way that plays out. No need to go into spoilers, although it's a fairly old game. That is impressive. It's actually some kind of interesting commentary on parenting, and the parroting effect of parenting, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to kind of mock what I've seen throughout my life. And in a way that, now that I'm fucking thinking about it, there is some commentary there on free will in general. But regardless, great game. I had an incredible time with it. For a score, I would probably, off the top of my head, somewhere around like a 8.6 or so for Bioshock 2. Alright, so y'all want to talk about some DLC, because we had some damn solid DLC that has released lately, and let's begin conversation with Separate Ways, the Ada Wong DLC. I never played this back in the day, and so this was all fresh to me. I obviously had some idea of where it went, but this was all pretty fresh to me, and it's just more Resident Evil 4, and so I was absolutely on board for any reason, any justification to jump back into this universe. I'm happy to oblige. And just kind of some, overall takeaways. For one, it's great to see the remade version of Wesker and get an idea of what his character model is going to look like moving forward. I thought the story out the gate here was so goddamn charming and just cute. The Luis and Ada interaction, and just the silliness with it, with the whole dance sequence and stuff like that. Like, that shit's really, really charming. But the fucking grapple gun. Like, it's one of the most fun gameplay mechanics. Every time it's included in almost any game, you're jumping for joy, because it's always better to have a grapple gun than to not have one in an action game. And the utilization of it in Resident Evil 4 is just magnificent. You're Spider-Man swinging with your grapple hook. You're blasting an enemy in the dome while these like catapulting attacks are being launched at you, and then you see that cannon off in the distance. You run towards it, and then you grab onto that cannon, and you're just launching that shit. You're launching those damn what would it be called? Cannonball? I guess cannonballs, right? You're launching those cannonballs at all the different environments. You're seeing the environments implode as the cannons, launch into the sides of these castles and shit, which is, in the original game as well. But using using that grapple gun to get around, and then also you can use it in combat as well. You'll like blast a dude in the dome, and then he's kind of stunned for a second. You use your grapple hook to swing to him, and then you hit him with like a spinning heel kick. And then you immediately take that knife and just jab that bitch through their fucking esophagus. You got that knife going through their damn jugular. RE4 is just, it's one of those games where, like, even though you can totally avoid a lot of the combat encounters, you never really want to. You know, you can clearly get to your destination quicker if you don't take out every single enemy and you don't stay in those combat battles nonstop. But like, I legit want to clear out the entire room every single time because the gameplay is so fun. And it's awesome that you know, it's kind of a push and pull where you get rewarded for each enemy that you kill with, you know, getting different resources and different items, which does kind of persuade you to go with a more actiony approach to your playthrough or whatever. And I can see people who want to feel more tense and kind of scout out and just have more of that old school, I'm not going to use my gun unless I have to, I'm just going to rely on my knife. And you can do that for sure, but this feels like a game that rewards you for engaging with as much action as humanly possible. And for me personally, I love it. I love it, especially with the new features on offer here with the grapple hook and all that stuff. It makes combat so satisfying in Separate Ways. Listen, like I said, a lot of what makes Separate Ways great is what made Resident Evil 4 or the remake great. The only real big, like, significant difference, you know, the story, obviously you get a new story there, but the biggest significant difference is the grapple hook. That does change the way you traverse, the way you explore, the way that you engage with combat. Like, it's a big game changer. But outside of that, it's, you know, you're going through similar environments. It's the same exact structure to the gameplay, obviously. And so, yeah, it's not the most revolutionary DLC. It's only a few hours long, but I don't know, for $10 damn, I think this thing was $10. Like, 4 hours, 5 hours of gameplay for $10, that's a damn good deal to me. And like I said, it's just a game world that you want to be in. You know what I mean? It's a game world that, like, you'll see the lasers and they're protecting some box off in the distance, and then, you know, anytime you get spotted by the lasers, they just gun you down, and there's just like these little boxes off in the distance. You're like, I want to see what's in those damn boxes. Why are they being so heavily protected? So I'm going around and I'm disabling all the lasers. I'm finding out how to disable the lasers. I'm shooting the, you know, fucking flammable barrels, and then that's blowing up the lasers, and I'm going off and I'm getting to the box, and, you know, going through the box, and I'm like, damn, why is there nothing cool in these fucking boxes? And you're like kind of disappointed for a second, and then you turn around and oh, there's a dumpster there. What's in that dumpster? And oh shit, okay, I guess that was kind of worth it. Listen, man, I am very biased with Resident Evil 4. I love the base game. I love Separate Ways. I just don't have a ton of real critiques for this title. And you know, even the thing where it's not a ton of reinventing the wheel going on here, like a DLC that we'll talk about in a second. It's like, yeah, but it's also $10, so it's hard to use that as a real criticism for the game. I think the only thing I would say that is not a major critique, but Ada's, you know, the lady who is delivering the lines for Ada, it's really hard to get invested into her character. And I love Ada as a character, you know, from RE2 and 98. Like, I was just like, holy shit, you know, that character stands out so much. And it's really hard to get invested whenever the lines feel so flat in RE4 and RE4 Remake. And I don't feel like it's as much as the actress's problem as it is the direction. Like, she needs more direction, it feels like. I don't know how this, you know, went through all the damn checks and balances over at Capcom, and they were like, yeah, let's use that. I understand wanting to get away from, like, the cartoonishly sexualized portrayal of Ada from the you know, old games, but this is just so flat, And if they're wanting to use her more going forward as like a main focal point and main character in the story, I feel like you gotta have something that's just a little bit more memorable, I guess, something that people can latch onto, like some personality that people can latch onto. I understand wanting to go for this kind of cold, emotionless, just straight up to the point, all about the business kind of a character, but I don't know. It's just it does feel very hard to get invested into her as a main character now, and I definitely didn't feel that way even playing, Resident Evil 6. Like I thought Ada's character and the campaign, and that was fascinating, really really interesting, and I was totally invested into her as a character, and I just don't necessarily feel the same way with the RE4 remake and this game, or separate ways, the DLC. To be totally honest, I enjoy Resident Evil stories more than probably the average person, but the gameplay is the gameplay. That's why I'm there, and the gameplay here is tremendous. This would be, it's hard to grade something, grade a DLC, but as a DLC, this is definitely a 8.9 to 9.1, somewhere in that very high 8s, very low 9 range for me. And then moving on from one DLC to another, we have a DLC that probably could have been a full game, and that's, I guess, CDPR, that's their forte at this point. We have Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Oh boy, this thing is this is something. This is something. They got to put this on a disc for the PlayStation 5 before it's too late, to have this thing, this version of the game preserved, with Phantom Liberty intact, with, Cyberpunk 2.0 intact. Because, man, this is a night and day different experience than I had with Cyberpunk 2077 at launch. And, that was putrid, horrible, unacceptable. This is game of the generation style shit. And I will say, though, I did run into a couple major bugs in Phantom Liberty, and obviously it'd be nice to get that cleaned up before they printed out a physical release of this new next gen version of Cyberpunk 2077, because if I'm not mistaken, the only way you can buy this physically is still for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, if I'm not mistaken. But other than the handful of bugs that I ran into, this was a real treat to go back to. And I forgot how easy this game is to jump back into. Compared to something like Burning Shores, which I played this year as well. And it's been longer, I believe, since I've played from my playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077 to Phantom Liberty, than it has been from Forbidden West to Burning Shores. And Burning Shores was just really challenging to get back into. That game is just so fucking complex with its different, mechanics and abilities, and just all your different potions and healing items and all that stuff. It takes a second to get reacquainted with that game. Phantom Liberty, I jumped into this thing and I was off to the races. There was no real hurdle to get over. I was gone. It was excellent. So, like I said, this is pretty much an entirely new game. You're being introduced to this new district called Dogtown, and it's like this grimy, kind of seedy underbelly, criminally ran, kind of grimy, lawless, somewhat Gotham-esque territory, but also really, really beautiful in a grim way. And there's moments in this thing, like at the very beginning of the game, when you're watching you're like overlooking this football field, and that feels very reminiscent once again to something like Dark Knight Rises, and you're seeing, you're overlooking this football field and a helicopter's being attacked, and you're seeing the helicopter, coming down, and it is this incredibly cinematic, just, it's stunning. It feels so epic. And I've said this before about CDPR, but they're one of the few developers that, it's so hard to quantify this or elaborate on this in any real way, but their games feel cool. And I don't know why it's so hard for developers to make a game feel cool, but CDPR just nails the feeling of cool, whatever that is. And like I said, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just I'll try to explain it even though I can't, but it's like the way that the lines are delivered, the way that these people interact with one another, it just, it feels like so natural and so human. And like the world building that they do. And while it, might not be as interactive as some of the other great open world RPGs out there, it does have such a specific sense of place. And like seeing chaos ensue in the streets after the president's helicopter, or I think it's actually a plane that gets attacked. After seeing, the plane get attacked, and the chaos is ensuing in the streets, and people are like rioting and they're fleeing like maniacs, and like the streets around you and the buildings above you are all up in flames, and it establishes such a fantastic sense of place without having to really beat you over the head with dialogue or cutscenes to tell you what's going on. Like the world just tells you what's going on so naturally. And the story across the board here is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And I was also really surprised to see how often Keanu Reeves is used in Phantom Liberty. I was pleasantly surprised by that. And then, obviously the introduction of Idris Elba as Reed and his character arc is, I'll say that his portrayal of that character is pretty one-dimensional, but it feels purposefully one-dimensional. Like he's really trying to nail that stoic performance, and I thought it was pretty strong, but once again, kind of a little bit flat at times. Like it wasn't a huge disappointment or anything, because I think the narrative moments that he is put in and when he is utilized, it feels so appropriate. That kind of stoic, even keel, calm, cool, collected, his sort of mantra feels so appropriate in the story when he is used. And like we talked about earlier, this is a story rooted in espionage and politics, and the politics of the streets versus like national scale politics. And you as V are kind of in the middle of all this, just being pulled in so many different directions that you're just like looking for a cure to get Johnny the fuck out of your head. And so it's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna work with the president to do so, once the president is attacked. And they set it up to where you kind of get initiated into their like essentially FBI style program, and you're working alongside the president to find her attacker. And then I don't want to like spoil anything too much. Once again, there's no need to spoil this. We can talk around it. But the ruler of this dog town, the ruler of the underbelly, is a fella named Hansen. And one of the moments in this story inside the casino with Hansen and a brother and sister that you run into, once again, just the mission just embodies cool. It just feels like a dope ass James Bond moment where you are trying to get intel and information out of these characters, and you're playing it calm and cool, and you're slowly making these decisions to lead the character on based off of their personality types, and you're using their own character defects against them, and it's so good. But now to transition over to the gameplay, this was a totally different experience for me with Phantom Liberty opposed to the base game, where I played the base game all the way through just more as kind of a straight up first person shooter, and in Phantom Liberty, it was all melee combat for me for the most part. I got the Manus blades, and so I get that modification, and I am just going through playing this thing like I'm Wolverine, man. You get the new relic abilities, and one of them is that you can jump like 2 stories above you, and after you do like a special kill on an enemy, you can jump like 2 stories above you and just decapitate a motherfucker with your Manus claws. I'm gonna call them Wolverine claws. And you can like always kind of hot swap these different abilities around. So if you're using one but you're like, man, I think this other ability here, this other relic ability might work better for this specific mission. So you remove the point that you spent on that one, you put it onto the other, and it's like, okay, now this mission's more about stealth. So they have like a full cloaking ability that you can use, and I relied on that quite a bit. I was swapping in between those a good bit, but the fun, anytime I was really having a blast, it was when I was just going all in with my damn Manus blades. And I mean, I upgraded my character, and like I said, I don't know if this was in the base game because I played, like I said, more of a first-person shooter in the base game, but I upgraded my abilities where I'm able to deflect bullets with my Manus blades. So I got my Wolverine claws deflecting fucking oncoming bullets back at enemies. It is one of the most satisfying things I've ever felt in a game, where I almost at times feel just totally invincible with those blades. But yeah, there were a lot of surprises going back to this, and a big one that I recognized was the environmental destruction, which I do not remember being on offer in that base game much at all. And just seeing like, a machine gun, a turret ripping apart these brick walls, or ripping apart these walls as you're running past them, and the machine gun's just taking out these walls, and you're trying to find somewhere to run to get cover, to hide and wait for the gun to cool down so that you can attack. And like, these are things that I do not remember seeing, that type of environmental interaction, that environmental destruction taking place. I do not remember seeing that in the base game at all. Maybe it was there and then it just slipped my mind, but I don't remember seeing shit like that whatsoever. Or even like, the ability to jump off of your motorcycle and jump down onto an enemy with, once again, with those Manus blades. Like, I could be mistaken. That could have been in the base game, but I do not remember it. And I mean, the technical performance of this thing is just, it's so much cleaner. I remember driving down the highway in 2077, and anytime I was speeding up to any significant degree, this thing was just chugging along, dropping frames like horribly bad. I'm just cruising around Phantom Liberty in this 2.0 version, no problems, just taking a day, going for a cruise, looking around at the environments. The game is running at I don't know if it's a locked 60, but it's feeling like a very smooth 60 frames per second. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a humongous open world RPG. You'll have the occasional frame rate hiccup here and there, but not enough to disturb your experience, or at least for me, not enough to disturb my experience whatsoever. My only real gripe with this game, other than like some of the big bugs that we talked about earlier, my only real gripe is that you have a few big moments where you get to make choices in the narrative that have real consequences, but it doesn't feel in the same way, like where it felt like Starfield, I'm constantly getting to make some decision that feels at least mildly impactful. I don't get that sensation in Cyberpunk 2070 or Phantom Liberty much at all, where like the little in-between moments, it didn't feel like I had much agency whatsoever in those moments. And I didn't really feel that way in Cyberpunk 2077, the base game, either. It felt similar, where it's like a few big decisions, you get to make an impact in the narrative in those moments, but there's not a lot of that in-between stuff to keep you engaged and feeling like you're having some direct control and some agency in this plot. So yeah, all in all, excellent DLC. If I was to score this, I think I would probably give it like a solid flat 9. Alright, so the rest of these games, I think every single thing here is something that I've already talked about in a PS5 pickup video, so I'll just briefly, very, very briefly go over a few of the other games I finished. Daymare 1994, I finally finished that. I was talking about it in that pickups video, saying I think I was like halfway through it or close to halfway through it at that point. I did finish it. I enjoy it much more than the first game, and when I went back to it, it was cleaned up like a ton, man. Whenever I first played it, it was weird. The gameplay was fine, no stuttering, no choppiness or anything like that, but the cutscenes, like, it was a bunch of screen tearing and weird shit going on in the cutscenes. I was like, okay, that's a bit jarring. When I went back to it, that seems to have totally been patched out, ironed up. So that made the story experience much better, and it's a really well presented, solid narrative throughout the entire runtime. I do not remember Daymare 1994 having nearly as compelling a story as Daymare 1998 for sure. My biggest criticism with this title is that there's not a damn map. I don't get it. Why in the world are you giving me a game with, not a ton, but mild backtracking around some. I mean, it's not a big world, but the world is too big. The locations, the environments are too big not to have a map. It's just, it doesn't make sense in my opinion. And so there's no map. I'm going through, I'm backtracking, and sure, you find out where you're supposed to go relatively quickly, but there shouldn't be any of that at all, in my opinion. Like, just give me a map. That just any game like this, any survival horror game, any game where you have a somewhat decent sized location, environment, world for me to explore, rather it be a house, a prison, a mansion, a forest, whatever the hell, you know what I mean? All your survival horror basics. Just give the player a map. The puzzles are okay. They're usually pretty straightforward and to the point. There's a few kind of mildly obtuse ones that'll take you a second to tinker with. It's more just like a quick trial and error thing, and nothing too. It's not like the Resident Evil 3 water level puzzle or anything overly laborious like that. The gunplay, or just I guess gameplay in general, is pretty strong. You, as well as having the guns, you have the ability to freeze enemies, and you can also upgrade that. They have like a full machine there for you to go in and upgrade that, and yeah, it's always satisfying. Every time that you freeze an enemy and then take your shotgun out and blast that bitch's head off, that is fun. And then there's like these little orbs that pop out of the enemy's body, and if it's a red orb, that'll be an orb where you have to like blast it immediately, and if you don't, that orb will infect one of the other creatures, and they will become a new zombie type that you can't kill unless you freeze it first. And then the blue orbs, those are orbs that they will just infect the different creatures, turning them into these electrified zombies that you can kill with just your gun. Like, you don't have to rely on your freeze ability. At times, I will say they do get a little bit bullet spongy, and then they'll throw in hordes and hordes of enemies running at you, and like I said, you can try to prevent that, but at times you're too overwhelmed to be able to prevent that. It's a somewhat challenging game at times, and my complaint is that you clearly, like, you'll have a key, you'll have, the ability to get to the room you need to get to, and there will be sections of the game where it's like totally blocked off, and it's forcing you to get in this, battle with these enemies just to deplete you of resources before you get into your next boss fight. And so it adds like a next level to the threat that you're about to encounter. And I don't know, it feels a little bit cheap at times, where it's like, well, I have a strategy here. I kind of have a plan of attack that I would like to take, and in all reality, I probably should be able to just use this key that I have to get through this door, and there shouldn't be any way that I'm blocked off from doing that just because there's enemies in this arena. But yeah, overall, I thought the game was pretty solid. I would give it like a 7.2, 7.3. Alright, I already talked pretty extensively about Immortals of Avium in one of those PS5 pickup videos, so we'll skip that. I did a full video about Starfield that's close to an hour long, so we'll skip Starfield as well. You know what? I'll run through. I'll give like a quick score for everything else and like a very, very quick breakdown, because I know this is already long as shit, and I was trying to make this a 30-minute video. I failed drastically on that, but Trepang 2, talked about it in a PS5 pickup video. Nice, solid, fear-inspired first-person shooter. Cool cloaking abilities and slowdown abilities, and some solid gore and dismemberment going on, which I always appreciate. Very simple storyline, not much in the way of narrative. A real difficulty spike towards the end of the game, which I found to be a bummer. And I'm not the world's best, FPS player. I'm not the world's best first-person shooter guy, but I feel like I'm decently competent enough. I was having a fine time going through it before, and then it really increased the difficulty on you, like, very, very suddenly, which is not the most pleasant thing to encounter at the very end of a game, but overall, it was a fun time. I would say it's a solid, like, mid 7.4, 7.5 to me. Fort Solis, another one that I talked about in one of the recent pickups videos. It is a very much a narrative driven walking simulator. Great character models, really, really strong story. The number one thing a walking simulator can do wrong to piss me off, to make me not engage with it, is just to be annoying, monotonous, or just kind of like boring or drag out too long. This does none of that. This does really nothing wrong for a walking simulator. Like, I think if you enjoy walking simulators and you are a big narrative guy, I don't really see a world where you're going to dislike this game. It is a really strong narrative from front to, I shouldn't say front to back. The ending's a little bit hokey, a little bit cheesy, but it's a strong narrative throughout. The voice performances, the acting performances throughout the game are incredible. It's really just like a Resident Evil game with no combat. And I had a real good time with this. It's simple. There's not a lot going on. It's quick. It's short. It's you're done with it in like 2.5, 3 hours. So not a lot of meat on the bones, but I'd recommend this. I think I'd be like high 7s, low 8s on this thing. Mortal Kombat 1, I know that I hadn't finished that when I recorded the first PS5 pickups video, and I got really confused by the story towards the end. Like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on with the narrative at all. It took like a left turn, and I was just left totally confused. I'm not going to score this game because I don't fucking play fighter games. I really don't know anything about fighting games or how to even critique that genre. It's not my forte at all, but I liked the story until I didn't like the story because I got so damn confused. But yeah, man, if I'm not mistaken, that is every single game I have played and finished in the last 3 months there for you. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. I apologize about how damn long this is. I promise I'll try to edit the hell out of this thing and trim it up to the best of my ability. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you good people in the next video. Hit me in the comments down below. Let me know what you've been playing. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to stick around and see more content. And until next time, take it easy, good people. See you soon. Goodbye.